All right, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. So this is our topic tonight, allergies and asthma. And I first want to recognize you. I know we're all busy. And the fact that you guys are showing up for this tells me that it's important to you and that you are action takers. And being action takers means that you want to learn more, you want to know what you can do either for yourself, maybe you know some other people that are struggling with this. And so welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. And I really want you to get the most out of this. So I'm going to ask you to really fully engage, because I don't know about you, but I've attended a lot of workshops and conferences and a lot of Zoom calls over the last year. And even when I go to a really great conference or presentation, and I get some really good nuggets out of it, and then somehow I just never get around to taking the action steps to implement them. So I hope that is different for you tonight. I hope you get some really valuable tools and ideas. And I'm going to make it as easy as possible for you to take action steps with the material that I want to deliver to you today. So here we are, we're gearing up for spring. And this is usually high time for hay fever, allergies, and other kinds of breathing concerns. Runny nose, red eyes, itchy eyes, congestion, you know the picture of all that. So does that sound like anybody else you know, right? But we know that it's prevalent. We know that a lot of people are suffering from allergies and asthma and other types of what we call atopic illnesses. So that is our topic for tonight. And why is it, do you think, that we have a rise in all these kinds of, not just allergies and asthma, but all kinds of chronic illness? There is a rise in it. And there was one study that actually named, there were 3 reasons why they thought there was a rise in all kinds of chronic illness. The first reason was that people just were not focusing on health promotion, on building health. So a lot of times in our culture, we get zapped and we go sideways with our health. And the first thing we're doing is trying to manage it. And then we're trying to stop ourselves from dying, or in this culture, we've been trying to keep people alive, but also keep them safe. But there hasn't been a lot of conversation about actually building health. And so that's one of the reasons why they think that there's a lot more chronic illness, is that people are not actually taking the steps to build health. And then the second reason was that there was a lack of awareness of what to do to take care of the body. People actually just didn't even know what they should do. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of information that's out there, but you're never really sure what can you trust. And you can all go ask Dr. Google, and there's a lot of things being censored these days that you can't even get information that you want. And then you're not sure, is it misinformation? Is it, so there's a lot of confusion that's out there. So tonight I'm going to deliver to you exactly what I use right here in the practice, what I know works, and what you can do at home for yourself as well, so that you have not only the ability to just be done with allergies and asthma, but how it can also impact the rest of your life and your health as well. The third reason that they said, and I think this was actually the biggest reason why we have so much chronic illness today, including allergies and asthma, is procrastination. Even when people knew what to do, they just never got around to it, and they just put it off. So it's that same thing of, you learn some really great information from a conference and then you just don't put it into action. So again, I really hope that that's different. I want to make sure we can change that. And so this is all about breathing issues, ending allergies and asthma. And I want to just start by setting some ground rules about our premises that we're coming from. So first ground rule is that you are designed to be healthy. You're designed to be healthy. It is the design of the body to be healthy, right? It's not designed to be sick. It's not designed to have breathing issues and allergies and asthma. It's designed to be healthy. And so we know that that's the what we're born with, what we come in with. And I still have people that say, oh, no, you don't understand. This is something, everybody in my family has allergies or asthma. Or I often hear the one, doc, you don't understand, diabetes, it runs in my family. And what I tell people is, the problem is not that diabetes runs in your family. The problem is that nobody's running in your family. These are lifestyle things. These are things we can actually change. And so we're going to cover what role does genetics play in this, but also what role does lifestyle and health choices, how much of a factor is that as well. Second premise we want to start with is that our bodies are smart. right? You are intelligent. Your body is intelligent. Every cell in your body has intelligence in it that is always trying to move towards health. And so if there's something that's getting in the way, we have to figure out what it is, that it's not expressing its health. And of course, in our culture, it's set up so that if something goes sideways with your health, people are pretty much corralled and rooted right towards medications, like manage this with medications, right? And we see that over and over again. And so again, if you think if your body is smart, why would you then give medications as if it doesn't know what it's doing, right? That's really what the thinking behind taking medication is. There must be something wrong with my body. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So this medication is going to make it do what it should be doing, right? But if we understand that the body actually is smart, we just have to actually learn how to talk the language of the body and understand the language of the body. So we're going to talk about that as well. What do the symptoms actually mean? What are they telling us? So that it can direct us in a different direction of recognizing there's a message here. How do I respond to that message? Instead of just trying to quiet that message. Let's just stop the message, stop the symptom, so that I can just keep doing the things the way I've always done them, right? And that's actually another premise, is that if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting. So I want to talk to the people on the call tonight that are getting good results. I want you to keep doing what you're doing. But the people that are not happy with your outcomes, I want you to really take action steps tonight and change what you're doing. And then finally, if we look at if our body is smart, what is it? What system is it that is running everything in the body? It's our nervous system that does that. Our nervous system is the master system that's controlling everything. And so if something is not working right, that's the first place that I want to look. You know, if you go home and you walk into your house and one room, nothing is working in that room. The appliances aren't working, the light bulbs aren't working. You don't waste any time checking the light bulbs to see if that's the problem. What do? You go right to the power source and see, you know, right down to the basement, where's that fuse that's blown for that room? And so that's where we often want to look. If your health is going sideways, what system is in charge of controlling it all? Nervous system. And then your spine is what protects your nervous system. And that's where all the messages are flowing from the brain to the body. All of it's through the spine. So your spine is your lifeline, right? So those are our premises that we're starting from. And I want to start with just a brief story, again, just to help make these teaching moments. So 3 frogs sat on a log. One decided to jump. How many frogs are on the log now? I want you to type in the chat box how many frogs are going to be on the log after one frog decides to jump. I want to make sure the chat's working. So everybody put in there, how many frogs are on the log now? They're starting with 3. How many are on the log now? Is anybody having trouble with their chat working? There we go. Okay, there's one. So Gail says 2. Anybody else? Mariah, what do you think? How about you, Jennifer? Mariah thinks 2. How about you, Jennifer? Maybe she's not there, but Jennifer, if you hear and you can figure it out, just type right into the chat so that I can make sure we're all fully engaged here too. Okay, so we're going to move on here. So the answer to this story is, oh, wait, there's still 3 frogs on the log. How come? Because deciding to jump and actually jumping are 2 different things. All right. How often have we decided we're going to make this change? We're going to do something. We're going to take an action step. And then we just never actually do the action. Right. So that is the story for this evening. So when you get a nugget tonight, like when you hear something that like, whoa, I didn't know that, or, ooh, that's useful to know. I want you to just type into the chat box nugget, or that was gold, or useful, or, you know, something to let me know that you're getting some useful pieces here. And then when we start to get into the action steps, if you feel like there's something like, I want to take an action, then typing it in is actually a great way to set the tone. It helps you increase your commitment when you actually put something in there. So I really want you to engage because I really want you to be able to make these changes in your life. All right, so body signals. We talk about symptoms as being, instead of calling it a symptom as something to treat the symptom, we talk about it as body signals, meaning the body is giving us a message to tell us that something is off, that we're moving away from health. And so we want to recognize these symptoms. And so here's an example. I had a woman that came in, and her name was Elaine, and she had struggled with allergies and asthma for years and years and years. And of course, all she knew was trying to use medication to deal with it. And the medication wasn't working. There was even some side effects from the medication that she wasn't happy with. And she actually attended one of these workshops, and she came actually with an in-person workshop. And she came to attend because she really wanted to find a solution. And so she comes in and she decides, I want to find out more. So we set up a consultation. She comes in for the consultation, and we go through her history, and we start to uncover that there were things that happened that may have affected her spine. And we were looking specifically at the nerves that go to the areas of the body that control all of these functions in the body. And indeed, we did find that she had these misalignments, nerve interference. And so we gave her a plan so that we could start to correct them. And so she's jumped in with both feet. She started the program. And over the year that she was under care, and then she reported an update. And of course, she was reporting all the time. But one particular testimonial that she gave, she talked about how significantly this had affected her whole life, and that she was able to get off of her medications. She was able to sleep better because she could breathe better at night. She was able to tolerate situations and events that she could never tolerate before. It was life-changing for her, and really remarkable. And so again, she had this concern that she was managing in the conventional way. And then she found out there was another way that she could approach it. And she got the results that she wanted, but she got them because she followed our plan. So all the instructions we gave her, she said, I'm on it. And she made all those changes. So again, she wasn't deciding and then not taking action. She took action, and she got the great results with it. So if you are someone that's curious about having a consultation with us at any point, of course, we would love to do that. And in fact, I'm happy to just schedule a 10-minute phone call with you, no charge. And if you want that, you can call us or send us a text at our, I'll put it in the chat here, our phone number. It's 802-985-9850. And just send a chat to us that you want to do a consultation, and we can take 10 minutes. We can do it over the phone, or we can do a virtual one, and we can talk it down and find out what your unique situation is. All right, so how bad is it out there as far as allergies and hay fever, rhinitis, asthma, eczema, these atopic types of illnesses? The CDC tells us from 2018, that's the latest stats, literally 19 million adults, that's 8% of our population, and 5 million kids, that's 7% of our kids' population here, have asthma. And also there are high rankings for allergies as well. It's even higher than that. In Vermont, 60,000 Vermonters have struggled with asthma, and that's 12% of our population. And more than half of these had severe or uncontrolled asthma, resulting in asthma attacks within the previous year. So this is really affecting people's lives. And despite the advances in diagnosis and treatment, the new drugs that come up, asthma still remains a very serious disease, and it's actually responsible for more than 3,000 deaths every year. So even though we have ways of treating it with medications and so on, people are still dying from it. And so we need a better way here. So let's now look at, bring my, over here, there we go. So let's look at what the stats show us. And you can see if we look at from 1900, so literally in the past century is when it has gone extremely high. And sometimes it's hard to realize because we're so used to it in our population that like lots of people have allergies, lots of people have asthma. But if you look at this trend, it's significant. Like I remember when I was a kid in school, there was maybe a couple of kids that had asthma, but there weren't a lot of kids. And there were a few kids that had allergies of some sort, but we never saw the food allergies that we have today and so on, right? So something is happening in our culture where we see this skyrocketing, this hockey stick, this inflection point. And you can see about where that inflection point happens. It's kind of in the 1970s, 60, or mid 60s up into the 70s, where it goes up. And then in this one is showing us again, if we take it from 2000 onwards to 2010, look, that inflection point, it's still going up with allergies, with asthma, with respiratory infection, right? We can see over that period of time as well. And here's one that looks at food allergies. Again, a dramatic increase in prevalence. And you can just see it's going in this direction and we're not seeing it change. And so something has to change. Like the way that we are managing it as a culture is not working. It's just getting worse. So we have to find a better way because the direction this is heading, it is not looking good. More and more people are struggling with all types of concerns. So let's now look more closely here at this idea of body signals. We think of the symptoms as body signals. It's the body's way of asking for help. So the question is, are you listening? Or are you just trying to mask it and not hear it? And of course, that communication, sometimes the body whispers to us, sometimes that body is screaming at us, and we have to pay attention. And so again, in our culture, oftentimes it's just take the drugs, avoid the triggers, like just don't go outside in the spring, right? Or just don't eat those foods, right? That's often just don't exercise if that's what causes you to get asthma. So we tend to restrict our lives as your function actually may be getting worse. And if we are taking medications that mask the symptoms, our function actually may be getting worse, even though we're feeling okay. It was Dr. Marcia Angel, who was the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine for about 20 years. I mean, imagine the research that crossed her desk. And she said, you can never medicate your way out of a situation you've behaved your way into. You'll just feel better as you're getting worse. Those are her words, right? So she had some insight there, and there's some truth being spoken there. And so again, we've got to find a better way. Now, I want to just take a moment to tell you about why is this so important to me? And I, help lots of people, but why would a chiropractor be talking about allergies and asthma and that kind of thing? Well, long ago, when I was 13 years old, I actually had a case of strep throat, which is affecting the immune system, right? And my dad had just become a chiropractor, and he gave me my first adjustment, and I could swallow more easily right after that, and I got better really fast. So my first experience with chiropractic was that, it helps your immune system work better. And so allergies, we're going to unpack this a little bit in a few slides, that we're going to see that allergies are on that spectrum of immune system function. So that was my first experience of chiropractic, was that it helps your immune system. And then as the years went by in my teen years, finally by 16, I was sure that I was going to become a chiropractor. And then I just got into natural health, and I probably bothered everybody around me because anytime anything came up, I was always the one to say, you need to get adjusted, or you need to take some supplements or something like that. So I always did that. And okay, nothing's changed, right? Here we are 40 years later, nothing's changed. I'm still a health nut, right? I'm still always leaning in on people to make the healthiest choices. And the reason is because what I recognized as I opened my own practice and started to work with people is I would have people that would come in and they'd say, wow, I wish I'd found you sooner. And then after a while, it started to hit me that I have to actually get out there and reach people so that I can get to them sooner. Because I would then, now and then I would hear about the person that had meant to see me and they didn't get in. It was a spouse. And then next thing you know, like they died of something that actually was preventable. And then I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to create these pivot points for people so that I can reach them before they hit a crisis. And once they hit the crisis, now they're getting on the medications and going in that direction because they waited too long and they were in that emergency situation, and then they just had to make decisions. So creating pivot points as early as possible to get people on the road that they want to be on of optimal health, that's what I dedicated my practice to. And so that's why I do these workshops, and once we can all meet in person, we do screenings and we do corporate talks. And so I do that, I reach out because I want to create those pivot points as early as possible in people's lives. So if we look at the immune system, I know that the more people understand about the immune system, the better choices they make, the easier it is to make these pivots. So I'm going to unpack this idea of the nervous system, the immune system a bit, so that you understand how it works, and then it'll help you to make smarter decisions. So the immune system, we can kind of talk about immune system 101. All right, what is the purpose of the immune system? It's our defense system, right? The immune system is our defense system. And it's a defense system against infections and invaders. right? I want you to think of like the armed forces, right? In our country, we have the armed forces and we have certain specialties, right? So part of the immune system's work and as a defense system is there's some intelligence work that needs to happen. So just like we have our national intelligence, the FBI and the CIA, they're all gathering information in order to then bring our forces to do something, right? So there's an intelligence that's part of this immune system that gathers information. And if you get the right information, you're going to be able to make the correct response. But let's say that there was a spy that was feeding us the wrong information to the CIA, and we made wrong decisions because we didn't get the right information, right? So information and intelligence is part of this whole defense system. There's an intelligence to it. And then there's the armed forces that are going to respond. So we have the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, and they're all specialists and they're trained for various special ops, right? So depending on what you need, you're going to direct that branch of the armed services to go do that job. So the immune response, right? The immune response, it attacks organisms and substances that could threaten or harm the body. So it's always going to be looking at what is a threat and what isn't a threat. And if it's not a threat, that's nothing to worry about. We're in peacetime. But if there's a threat, we gotta muster up our forces and have the right ones go and do the job. And so it's a network of specialized cells and tissues and organs that they all work together to protect the body against invaders. All right, everybody's tracking this, right? Brilliant analogy here, right? Because it's so right on. The organs are things like the tonsils, the thymus, the lymph nodes, the spleen, the different glands that are part of the immune system. They all need to work in a coordinated manner with the nervous system and also with the hormonal system as part of this as well, the endocrine system and the immune system. So really, although we think of the immune system, we name it as though it's a separate system, it's actually all intimately related. We really should be calling it the psycho-neuro-endocrine immunosystem, right? Because it's our stress levels are going to impact that and our hormone levels. And when our nervous system perceives a threat, a stress, it's going to ramp up certain, it's going to recruit and ramp up certain factions to do a job. And if somebody else was looking at the same scenario and they were not stressed by it, they wouldn't ramp up those systems in their body. So it's our perception as well. And so our nervous system is going to direct whether it's time to turn the immune system on or off. And so it's all working together. And it's critical to understand the broadness of this system that's working together to monitor the body and defend you against germs or substances that may harm the body. And so it's all, and also the immune system plays a critical role in tissue repair. So when damage happens, when we have to heal after an injury, that's also the role of the immune system. And so it's everything from viruses, bacteria, but even cancer is part of immune system function, how we are going to deal with those kinds of invaders. So when this incredibly complex and sophisticated system is functioning optimally, the body stays healthy. And when we're under constant attack from potentially harmful bacteria, viruses, or cancers, it's the immune system that will be constantly at work. And it's always in a state of surveillance and defense. So it's always watching, picking up information, and then it's going to act on that. The immune system keeps harm at bay and is defending you 24/7 when it's working properly. Okay, so that is the thing. It's going to work. It's going to take care of us when it's working properly. And the immune system is central to our body's health maintenance and our healing system. And so there's a word that is often used called homeostasis. And so homeostasis means kind of keeping everything in balance, keeping everything status quo, and I like that word balance, but let's recognize that just like an airplane that is, on track, you all have heard this before, the airplane that is on track towards its destination, but then it veers off and it course corrects, and it veers off and it course corrects. And actually, an airplane never just flies exactly straight. It's always course correcting to get to its destination. And so homeostasis is that idea of always coming back to. But sometimes people think of homeostasis or balance as just towing the line and just staying right on that line. And so I like the word homeodynamic as a better way to describe how the immune system works, that it actually is dynamic. There's a flux to it. And what we want to see is that not that it is rigid and never changes, but we want to see it responding, recognizing, and course correcting as it goes along. And so all of that is going to be based on this remarkable example of innate intelligence in the body. So the immune system is an awesome example of that innate intelligence that is always keeping us on track when it's working properly, when it can express itself. So for example, when a foreign particle that poses a threat to the body is detected by one of these highly specialized cells, a complex physiological cascade actually occurs. And it's triggered by different things. So you're going to produce powerful chemicals that are going to promote defense mechanisms. So for example, when you injure, let's say you sprain your ankle and there's inflammation that occurs, that's your immune system at work. And so it's part of the healing process is to make it become inflamed. But then part of that process is also to resolve that inflammation. So we want to build inflammation acutely, and then we want to resolve that inflammation. But if certain things get in the way and we don't resolve it, now we start to get into chronic inflammation. And that's when it's not working properly, when we get into this chronic inflammation. Another example would be if we encountered a pathogen that our body needed to take care of and get rid of, we may produce a fever in order to make the environment unhealthy, or not unhealthy, but make the environment inhospitable to that pathogen, right? And so we create a fever to fight an infection, right? That's the smart body, changing the body so that the immune system can ramp up. And it's interesting that, we create a fever because we actually need more calcium to be liberated, to be useful to the immune system. And so by increasing the fever, it actually gets the vibration of the bone cells to be at a higher oscillation, which then will allow some of them to free up, and that frees up the calcium, makes the calcium available. So interesting, when you do have a fever, if you take some calcium lactate, for example, is a very bioavailable form of calcium, oftentimes the fever will go right down because you have what you need now for the immune system. Another way that our body will produce powerful chemicals is mucus production. And so, of course, with allergies, there's that whole mucus thing that's a problem, right? Of the sinuses and the coughs and all of the postnasal drip, right? That's that increase in mucus. And that is a way of getting rid of the debris from the battles that are happening, all that dead stuff that needs to get out. Can be carried out with the mucus. But also it creates more of a membrane that makes it harder for pathogens to get past our lines of defense and to get into the body. So the mucous membrane is a way to actually build another line of defense right at the front lines, right where things can enter the body. That mucus will actually slow that down. So oftentimes these reactions will manifest as bothersome symptoms. Oh, I got, inflammation, it's swollen, or, oh, I got all that mucus being produced, or, oh, I've got a fever. And we think of them as, oh, this is a symptom that I want to get rid of. And so oftentimes we think of this as, oh, I'm getting sick now. We'll use that word, I'm getting sick, when these symptoms show up, these body signals, or I'm having an allergic reaction to something, right? Well, in a normal, healthy body, these symptoms or body signals are actually a healthy, intelligent response by the body. And it's critical for the body to be able to get rid of the threat and restore health. So the symptoms are the body getting healthier. Take that in, right? There's a nugget right there for you. The symptoms are signs of your body getting healthier. And if it then prolongs and it didn't continue to get into healthy mode, where it then peaked out, and then we see a restoration, and we see the inflammation actually resolves. If we don't see it resolving and we still see the symptoms continuing, then there's still more that needs to happen. Something's getting in the way of that resolution. And so oftentimes in our pervasive drug culture, when we have discomfort, right, we are seeking sometimes kind of way of dealing with the symptoms. So symptom suppression is often the way we tend to go, and it seems to count higher than health restoration. And it has fueled a multi-trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry, this idea of us just wanting to be comfortable, just wanting to stop the discomfort. And so, of course, it all comes with a price, and that price is greater than money, right? The price we pay for trying to just suppress the symptoms goes way beyond just the costs involved. And so sometimes the body malfunctions and the immune system can break down and be unresponsive. So when the immune system is unresponsive, then it can't actually do that job of resolving what's going on. And if we think of this idea of immunosuppression, where our immune system gets suppressed and it's not responsive, and it gets downregulated, that can lead to terrible health issues and terrible sickness. And so I want to now kind of show you create a context for you for all of this. So in this quadrant that we see, this is all aspects of how the immune system might go sideways. And it's based on where the triggers are coming from and then how we're responding to it. So for example, if you encounter a substance that is from the outside, like a pollen or something like that, but let's say you encounter a pathogen, like a virus or a bacteria, and if you respond properly to that, it's coming from the external, and you would create an infection, and then you would resolve that infection. But if you didn't resolve the infection, it would be a sign that your body was hypoactive. It wasn't active enough. So you can see in the bottom right quadrant here, an external factor that we didn't respond to enough, that was hypoactive, not active enough, could result in an infection that could then cause a problem because we didn't resolve it. If we overreacted to something coming in externally, like pollen, then that's what an allergy would be. So it's an over response of the body responding to something that's coming externally. Now, if we think of the other side of things, when we have cells in our body that are bad cells, right? They're mutated cells. Our body, our immune system should recognize that they are aberrant cells, and we should then go eat them up and destroy them. And that would be an example of addressing cancer. So we have cancer cells in our body all the time. And then we have a system called the immune system that recognizes when they're bad cells and destroys them. If we're hypoactive with that and we don't destroy them, then it can turn into the disease of cancer. So it's happening internally, it's our own cells, and they are not being cleared out. And so that's that bottom left quadrant. And then if in our own body cells, we have an over response to our own body, so we think our own cells we go after them and destroy healthy cells, that's autoimmunity. All right, so I hope this creates a context for you, because when we think of the immune system, it has so many different roles. So tonight we're going to continue on in that upper right quadrant, looking at allergies and atopic illness, that sort of thing. So again, we have these body signals that occur, and whether it's seasonal allergies, hay fever, or food allergies, or pet allergies, or bronchial asthma, or even eczema, those types of things, they're all called atopic disorders. So they're all a result of an oversensitivity of the immune system. And specifically, it's related to very powerful IgE-mediated reactions. So if you've ever heard of different aspects of the white blood cells and the antibodies, the IgE immunoglobulins are the ones that regulate the inflammatory response in the body. And so when this system goes sideways, the body is considered to be in a state of hypersensitivity or being hyperallergic. And it's primed to then overreact or overstimulate the immune system. Now, the good news is that science is now beginning to understand the root cause of these overreactions. And with this new information, we can actually focus on addressing the cause of the problem, and as opposed to just treating the symptoms. So most people, they've had experience with just trying to treat the symptoms, but they maybe never have looked at what the underlying cause is and how they can correct that. And of course, treating the symptoms, the problem with that is the dangerous drugs that sometimes people can use. And then the other aspect of it too is that oftentimes people that have allergies, they kind of live in a fearful state, like, oh no, what if I encounter this trigger, that I'm going to respond differently than what healthy, normal people respond as. And, I have to watch out that I need to avoid these things. I have a sister-in-law that she was allergic to peaches. And so we always had to keep on guard, oh, wait, make sure there's no peaches in there, right? You wouldn't have thought of that, right? Peanuts we think of, but there are some very interesting, strange kinds of food allergies that are out there as well. And so many times people are living, instead of living a full life, they're kind of missing out because they're just trying to avoid the next allergy or the next asthma trigger. So it really does affect people's lives. And so trying to correct these problems, it's important that we understand how the immune system develops. And now you're going to understand how these things actually come to be. Why is it that certain people get allergies and hay fever and eczema? So we're going to go do a little bit of, we're going to uncover what is the way that the immune system develops naturally. And so we're going to go right back to our premise that healthy is normal and sickness is abnormal. So if it's normal to be healthy and you're designed to be healthy, then how would we develop if we were developing in a healthy way? Remember, the body is hardwired to heal and survive, and your immune system is a critical part of that design and the objective to heal and survive. And so we're born with this incredible operating system, and we actually are born with it, but it actually needs to, there's certain parts of it that need to be schooled, right? We have to learn things of how to respond to our environment. And so we have this hardwiring operating system, and then we have the software that's going to then adapt. And the software is like the intelligence that's passed down for thousands of generations of successful human beings, truly remarkable as an inheritance of what we get from our ancestors, of an entire line of successful human beings, right? We inherit that. And then we have to train and develop our immune system. So that requires actually being exposed. So we were actually designed to require exposure and require challenges from our environment in order to train and develop our immune system. So again, if we go back to our armed forces analogy, so think of the very first recruits, right? They're at boot camp, right? And the first thing that they have to learn is just basic fitness training. That's the first thing, right? And they don't get to, handle the guns and everything the first day that they're there. No, they have to actually have basic training and get fitness first. Once they have their fitness training, then they start to learn hand-to-hand combat. And then they learn knife fighting. And then they get the rifles, and then they get the handguns, and eventually they get the explosives, right? But it's a system that is trained to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And each level of challenge creates a new skill, and they become more effective and a more powerful soldier. And the same can be said of our internal armed forces. Our immune system has to be challenged naturally to fully mature and develop. So we were designed to be exposed so that we could develop naturally. And so here's a few of the specific and crucial steps that you were designed to experience in nature. First, our birth process. So we were designed, even in utero, that we gain immunity through transplacental communication. So our mother actually will have part of her immune system is going to cross the placenta with the white blood cells and so on to engage that baby so that when the baby's born, it already has some degree of protection. And so that transplacental immunity actually comes from the mom having exercised her immune system, and she has these defenses already in her, and she can actually, those defenses can be shared with the baby, with the fetus and the baby as it's developing. And then as the body goes through labor, and the baby is actually their head is being compressed as they go through the birth canal. That was part of the design, to compress that brain and to get the fluids in the body compressed and expanding as you come through the birth canal. And that struggle is part of the design. And then there's that vaginal delivery, all right? So let's just go there with this, right? So how does the baby get its first population of healthy flora? It's actually coming from the mother's uterus and vaginal tract and the digestive tract. So the organisms that are in the rectum, they are there purposely to help populate that baby's immune system with its very first flora, to populate its gut, which is where 80% of the immune system lives, is in the gut flora. And so where exposure to the mother's normal flora is supposed to happen with a vaginal delivery. And then breastfeeding, right? When babies are breastfeeding, they're actually communicating with the mom, and they're telling the mom what they need that day. And the mom based on the breastfeeding, actually will get signals so that she will produce the exact ingredients in the milk that baby needs that day. It's amazing. In fact, I'm going to go forward. I want to show you this picture. So this is a picture. On the left-hand side is the mama's milk on one day. And then that night, the baby was having a fever and she was nursing the baby through the night. And then she pumped her milk the next day. Look at how different that milk is. And that is because the baby was programming the mother on what it needed in that milk for the next day, which is going to support its immune system. Isn't that like, talk about a smart body? Wow, holy cow. And so now we look at, and that was a joke, holy cow, when we were talking about nursing, right? Okay, some of you may have missed it. All right, keep you on your toes. So breastfeeding, again, so crucial for natural development. All right, we got a thumbs up there, great. So siblings are part of training the immune system. So being exposed to your siblings. So think of it as concentric circles. So first you're just with mom and you get her flora and that populates you. And then you're crawling on the floor in the home and you're getting the flora from the home. And you're interacting with the siblings or you're getting some of their flora and you're getting exposed to it. And then you're going to be outside in the grass and you're getting nature and the flora from nature. And your body just incrementally, as you explore more and more out into the community, you're getting exposed to more and more variety of flora. And when you think of expanding the environment, you're also expanding the exposure to germs. That's part of the design, is to keep expanding your exposure to germs so that you have a robust immune system that can handle living in your environment. When you think of teething, like what is it that babies do when they're teething, right? They pick up everything around them and they chew on it. And so you can imagine those teeth are just starting to break through. Maybe there's a little blood there and then they're chewing on dirt, right? And that's getting into the bloodstream because that's the way we expose the system so that we can then develop our immune system. It's the exposure that is so key. Eating dirt is actually part of the development that's expected with babies and with when they're creeping, crawling around, right? And so when we think of fever and childhood illnesses, this is all part of the design. Children are actually designed to be exposed to the childhood illnesses in childhood. And that's part of that robustness of building their immune system. Pediatricians that actually understand this, they have a motto, and it's 103 by 3. 103-degree fever by the age of 3. So we want to see a child experience a fever of at least 103 degrees, because once that happens, it triggers, it's a window of development that triggers the immune system and the nervous system to get coordinated so that it works efficiently for the rest of that baby's life, right? As that baby grows and develops. Having that happen before 3 years old is a window of development that's very important. So pediatricians that understand that, they're not going to freak out if a fever happens. They're going to celebrate it, like right on. This is exactly what should be happening because this baby has a smart body. And so we want it to experience that, right? And so how many parents, the fever happens, and in our culture, the media has trained us, you go right to the medicine cabinet, right? There's the fever. What is the fever for? You can ask a parent, they'll say, oh, fever is for fighting the infection. And then what's the first thing they do? Go to the medicine cabinet and get something to take the fever down, right? Even though they know it's there for a purpose, but we've been trained to want to take that fever down. And we could be literally interfering with the development of that immune system that is supposed to be happening right at that time. And so let's take a look at what actually does happen in unnatural development, which is, it's becoming more and more common that people are experiencing this, babies for their first encounter. So C-sections are happening more and more and more. And what happens in a C-section? Well, first off, that's going to circumvent the natural exposure to the mother's normal bacterial flora, right? You're going to cut open in a sterile environment in the hospital. You're going to cut open the mother, and then you're going to pull that baby out as quickly as you can. And then it goes like right to the NICU, or like it goes right to onto it doesn't go to the mom, right? It goes right to the bed to check it, make sure it's okay, because surgery's just happened, right? And there's been anesthesia, and there's been all kinds of things that have been invasive. So a C-section is going to be one of the first things that can interfere with natural immune system development. And there actually is an incidence of asthma that is higher in C-section births. Now, one of the reasons might be that they don't get that normal flora. Another reason is they don't come through the birth canal where they get that squeezing down of the brain and squeezing down of the chest, squeezing of the lungs and squeezing the mucus or the fluid in the lungs out, right? That comes through the birth canal. So they may not get that. But there's one other thing that I'm going to tell you later that's going to reflect back to the C-section births that is a high correlation to asthma. So we'll get to that later. So, but remind me, I don't want to forget it, but it's an important one to understand, right? So all of those things are so important. Now, again, it's the natural struggle of the vaginal delivery that stimulates the immune system development as well. But then what happens if the baby is formula fed, right? That formula is not smart. So if that baby is drinking from that bottle and it is trying to communicate that I need something different in these ingredients, nothing responds back, does it? There's no smart body of the mother to change the ingredients and the concentration of things that baby needs that day. So formula feeding is again going to be something that's going to inhibit the development of the immune system. And then all the critical benefits of nutrition that come through breastfeeding, the bonding, the hormonal benefit to the mother as well. Breastfeeding is great for her to just chill out. So it's an inferior option to breastfeeding in regards to the physiological communion between mother and child, and also passing on the crucial immune system boosters that are going to come to the child through the breast milk. And then we can also look at a child's immune system. It's designed to require these battles with common germs and pathogens. And that's how we train it so that it's healthy and normal, so that its response is going to be healthy and normal. And so that, again, it benefits the natural design, and it's absolutely necessary for a child to develop a strong immune system for life. It's like the basic training for the soldier, right? That's what's happening. And so when we start to interfere with that, with medications, like, oh, here's the Tylenol because you have a fever, that's going to interfere with that development of the immune system. Or other ways that we interfere, where we live in a germophobic culture now. I mean, this past year dramatically has changed that. So all of that environmental breathing in of the environment that would have happened, but now we've put masks on, and the masks may not allow that flow of air. We could see that this is going to play out in our kids as far as affecting their immune system development because of that. So I just want to put that on the radar to be aware of that. And so it's this type of developmental interference that trades the natural short-term acute childhood illnesses for the chronic lifelong conditions like asthma and allergies. And vaccination may be another thing that's going to start interfering with natural immune system function. And we definitely are seeing that just as the rates of vaccination have increased. Remember, we saw that hockey stick inflection of the allergies and going up, and it was right around the mid 1960s when it started to go up. I was born in 1960, so I was right at that cusp. So I know that I was vaccinated with a few vaccines. I had my own mumps and measles. I had my own chickenpox. And that was just, I had that childhood illness. And so, but as we move forward on, we started to introduce more and more vaccinations. And so, when I was a kid, maybe I think I got 5 vaccines total. And nowadays, kids are getting 72 vaccines. 72, take that in, right? And so all that is trying to prevent an acute childhood illness that actually we were designed to have. And by trying to prevent that, we may be actually creating more and more chronic illness. And so if you're curious about this, I can certainly give you more information about that. There's so many resources that are documenting this in our culture. And I'd love to share that with you. If you're interested, just let me know. You can put it in the chat there. Or you can just send it to the text and we can have a conversation as well. I'm happy to do that. All right, so the rates of both of these are tracking up significantly, and it's matching the increase in antibiotic overuse as well. So that is another piece that's going to interfere, is the use of antibiotics, which are wiping out the healthy gut flora. And in the attempt of trying to address a particular bacteria, maybe an ear infection, something like that, we give the antibiotics, and now it wipes out all the gut flora, even the healthy ones. And now we have to build that up again. And so it can interfere with that immune system development in children. And then in short, I want you to understand this word, the hygiene hypothesis. So the hygiene hypothesis is that we've become clean freaks, and we're over sanitizing a child's birth process, their home environment, their food sources have dramatically reduced natural exposure to bacteria, viruses, molds, and so on. And that was all part of the natural design, like fermented foods. If we look at 100 years ago, there was a lot more fermented foods that we would have been eating on a regular basis. And now everything is pasteurized and sterilized and heated before you can even put it in your body. And so we actually have that affecting us as well. And so as a consequence, children are left with this untrained neuroimmune response, and they're lacking the critical normal flora that's going to serve and protect them for life. So the natural design expects and requires exposure to typical household and common antigens and immune system stimulators, right? A baby trains for life in the first 3 years, right? That baby is training for the rest of their life in those first 3 years. That's when the immune system is developing. And we have these windows of development that once they close, then we don't recreate them. We have to now manage, and we have to work around them moving forward. So much like a soldier training for a battle in a boot camp, they then enter the world untrained, and they have a higher susceptibility to infection and atopic disorders. So can you imagine, if we have a soldier who is untrained suddenly thrown into the battlefield, a trained soldier might recognize a threat and know the least dramatic way to deal with that threat. Something very precise, you just take it out, it's done, over. Whereas an untrained soldier is going to get out the bazookas to try and manage something because they just don't have the training with it. Do you see how that works? So again, we see this epidemic that has occurred, and we see the inflection point happening right at that point when we start to introduce more and more vaccinations, more and more antibiotics, all of that happening at the same time. I'll tell you what, our food system also was changing during this time. We had more and more convenience foods, less and less of the homemade foods. I remember my mom, she loved these convenience foods, right? And so instead of us getting the homemade soup or the homemade meals, we would get the hamburger helper. We would get the TV dinners, right? And that was a new thing, that was exciting, and that was so much easier, right? And so we've paid now for the convenience because it's actually affected the development of kids. All right, and so what are some of the triggers then? When we think of these allergies that occur, asthma, we often think of them as triggers, and there's kind of 3 categories. There's toxins that we might be exposed to, there's allergens that we're exposed to, and then there's the dietary triggers as well. So when the untrained immune system faces the world, these are the different insults that can trigger the immune system, which usually they would be harmless environmental pathogens or invaders, but they now are being regarded as a threat. So a person who lacks a developed immune system, this exposure can trigger this hyperallergic reaction, and that's where we then see it playing out in these atopic disorders. And so again, we have to then ask the question, well, what are the factors that are all coming together here? So could genetics be part of this? Now, we would say that the answer to this is yes. Genetics have a part to it, but I want to just go back and take a look at something here. So when we think of how genes change, genes don't change. We've had the same genes pretty much over 40,000 years, right? And so when we look at this sudden epidemic, is it because our genes have changed in the last, 40 years? It's not that. It's not that our genes have changed. What has changed is our environment, the toxins that we're exposed to, and the diets that we're exposed to, and the development of our children has changed. And so when we look at, well, if genes could be involved, we actually know a lot about that aspect. So, we know if we look at which genes are involved, we have that the Human Genome Project helped us identify all the different genes in the human body and what they're related to and function. And there are literally specific gene, we call them genetic SNPs or variants that can occur. And if you're born with that variant and something triggers that variant to start expressing, you will have a much greater likeliness of having asthma or allergy. And these are some of the actual specific genes that we know that are related to people that struggle with asthma and allergies. So what's interesting about this is that these genes that may be variants, they don't always upregulate and express. They can be dormant and just be quiet. And so all of the different genetic variants that we have, we could go get a genetic test like 23andMe or Ancestry or My Happy Genes. That's another one that I love using these days. And it gives us a whole list of all the different genetic variants that that person has. But that list will not tell us if that gene is expressing or if it's dormant. And so we know that there's things that will happen that can upregulate a gene to start expressing when it would have been dormant. And there are things that we can do that can downregulate it and make it dormant again. And we know exactly what these things are. And it's literally our environment that will cause things to either upregulate or downregulate. And we know that we actually can get very specific with creating an environment. So if we avoid the trigger so that we aren't exposed to it, but that gene is still upregulated, you're just waiting for the next time you encounter that trigger. But what if we could actually optimize the environment so that that gene went back to sleep? Then you're exposed to that trigger and nothing is reacting to it. So right now, I actually am doing this high-level neurological testing of gene variants that may be expressing in unbeneficial ways. And because of nutritional deficits or toxic overloads, it's causing these things to upregulate. And then we can actually do tests for those variants. And then we can see what do we need to introduce to this system that's a very specific nutrient that's going to actually create the environment that will give the opportunity to downregulate that particular variant. It's pretty exciting to see what's possible these days. And so I'm really excited by the work that I'm doing with folks that is showing me this. So My Happy Genes is the lab that I like to use that gives the greatest number of genetic variants that it measures. So 23andMe, Ancestry, they do about half as many health-related genes. They're tending to be more focused on your ancestry, so they're looking at that. But My Happy Genes is all about, it's not about ancestry, it's all about health. So they have the greatest number of genes that are tested that relate to health. And then it literally, from that genetic testing, we can run it through programs and we can see whether you have a risk, for example, to respiratory or pulmonary system imbalances. And so if you have a low risk, you're going to be less likely to be having triggers of allergies or asthma. But if you have a high risk, you're going to be more likely that any stress that comes along may be actually upregulating your genetic variant so that it starts to express. I mean, people have told me, I didn't get these allergies until later in life I got them. And then other people say, yeah, I kind of outgrew my allergies. Didn't you ever wonder about that? Like what was actually going on there? It could be that you actually are downregulating or upregulating those genes on how they're then functioning in the body. And so I have some folks that I've worked with and that a couple of women actually were struggling with eczema, terrible, terrible eczema. One woman, she had it on her face, on her hands, and it was so embarrassing for her, and it was so uncomfortable, and it was itchy, and it was hot, and she was at her wit's ends. And so we actually used this system along with chiropractic care, and we literally, her face is beautiful now. And we have another woman that's going through the same process, and she's a little earlier on in the process, and she already has 50% improvement in her skin and with the way the eczema was expressing itself. So exciting to see what is really possible if we come at it from all angles. So if you're curious about the genetic testing that we can do, just send us a text and let us know. We can set up a consultation. We can talk about your situation and what options might work for you. All right, so part of our plan of care with these women that we got these great results, it also included chiropractic care. So I want to, again, just remind you about what is it that controls every system in the body, including the immune system. It is the nervous system that does that. And so the skull is the helmet that protects our brain. The spinal column is the suit of armor that protects our spinal cord. And so we have our spine here that's always with me, my spine. And we can see that we wanted everything to be in alignment. So if you look at the joints here, you can see in between the two bones is where the nerve comes out. And that nerve is going to carry the messages from the brain out to the body and back again. And as long as there's no interference in that flow of messages, then the brain has that full control. But as we said, what if it got a distorted message? So if there was any interference where there was pressure on the nerve, that could interrupt the flow of messages going between the brain and the body. And now the brain sends a message out and it's distorted. So the body gets a distorted signal. It's not getting the right information of how it should be functioning. Or the body is trying to send a signal up to the brain to tell it what's going on. But if there's distortion there, it's getting distorted or more vague information. And so it just can't respond as appropriately and accurately as what's needed. And so there may be a hyper response, an over response to something, or it could be an under response. Something is altered in the response. And so again, it's the body talking to the brain talking to the body, telling each other what is needed and what to do. And that's how you stay healthy. That's how you function. That's how you heal. But when that communication breaks down, that's when we start to see things going sideways. And so if you want a healthy body, you have to have a healthy nervous system. If you want a healthy nervous system, you have to have a healthy spine. And so how do we measure what's going on in the spine? Now, some people think, well, I don't have any back problems, so I must be okay. But the trickiest part about these nerve interference patterns, we call them subluxations, is that they can happen without any pain. But we have other ways that we can objectively measure them. So we can do scans of the nervous system, for example, that actually literally measure if there's any interference in the nerves controlling the organs or the nerves controlling the muscles and so on. And so, yes, sometimes, you can damage or get a jarring to your spine and there can be acute pain. And then that pain may go away, but the misalignment may actually still be there. And so that misalignment can carry on, starting to cause interference in the flow of messages. And then you start to see breaking down of function in the body, but you might not have a pain in that area. And so that's what can be tricky about it. However, if we actually look at, is the brain really controlling the body accurately? If there's anything interrupting that, okay, let's get on that, right? Just like you don't check the light bulb that's not working in that room where nothing's working, you go right to the fuse box, right? So we can see the spine is actually like the fuse box in the body. And so the wires that come out, that go to different rooms in the house, those wires are going to different organ systems in the body. And we know exactly where those organ systems are, where they're controlled from. And so we can start to look at, okay, where are the immune system organs? Where are the organs that are related to the sinuses and the lungs and so on? Where are the nerves that control that? And we can start to evaluate whether or not subluxations may be actually playing a role in why there is impaired function. So you can see on the bottom right box, that's our scans of the nervous system, that we literally are measuring what's happening in this body and is there evidence of nerve interference. So I'm going to show you the specific nerve interference patterns, subluxation patterns that correlate to some of these different atopic illnesses. So again, let's just look more closely at this idea of a subluxation. So when a subluxation occurs, there's a misalignment of the vertebrae, and that joint misalignment now creates some soft tissue damage. And then there's inflammation in that area, and that creates nerve irritation. And when you have nerve irritation from that vertebra moving and impinging on the nerve, your smart body says, we got to just stop that movement. It's just tearing up that nerve. So you will create a muscle spasm, which might include some pain, but it may not. And that spasm locks that joint down to stop the nerve irritation. And when that happens, now the disc in between the joints that usually has movement to squeeze toxins out and to suck the nutrients in, right? That movement stops because it gets locked down. And now we lose that, what's called imbibition, the flow of fluids in and out of the disc. We lose that. And now we start to see degenerative changes happen over time. And the joint, when it's strapped down and it gets fixated, we call it a joint fixation, right? It's not moving properly. These are all the components of a subluxation. And so we call it a movement deficiency syndrome, is where there's not enough movement in that joint. And when that's happening, usually we're going to get signaling going up to the brain, where the brain is getting accurate information about what's happening in the body. Part of that accurate information is the body moving properly? Am I getting the signal that movement is happening in the right way? When we have that joint fixation, we no longer send that signal to the brain that there's movement happening. And the brain just starts to lose track of what's happening there, because movement is how the brain recognizes where our body is in space. And if we stop the movement, it loses track of what's happening. And that then creates a global stress response in the body. So we have this stress physiology where cortisol levels go up. That's our stress hormones. And when stress hormones are high, our body is going to interpret that as, oh my goodness, there's a tiger somewhere around here. And the immune system is costing too much energy to run right now. We need to get ready to fight a tiger. So when we have high levels of cortisol, we will actually depress and alter the immune system. We'll downregulate the immune system. It's supposed to be temporary until the tiger's gone, which maybe be 15 seconds, 15 minutes. But we have this toxic ongoing stress. And so we just shut that immune system down for way too long. And then it doesn't have that chance to have that exercising of it and that immune system function that should be robust and responding appropriately. But instead, the nervous system says not right now, and it doesn't get to respond appropriately. So that's how subluxations will then have a global effect on our immune system. Now, there was some research that was fantastic here. And let's see. Yeah. So this was a paper that was called The Relationship Between Vertebral Deformities and Allergic Diseases. And so the authors found that there was a positive result. So they did a controlled study where they looked at, I think it was about 3,000 people they looked at in this study. And they were looking for whether there were vertebral misalignments. And when they corrected the misalignments, if it affected the atopic dermatitis and bronchial asthma. And they found that there was a correction of the spinal misalignments, improved the itching of the dermatitis, which is like eczema, right? Improved it by 88%. And for the ones that they corrected the subluxations or misalignments for this appearance of the skin also improved by 72%. And they also found the allergic symptoms improved in 70% of the patients who got adjusted, and bronchial asthma also improved. And these folks, they were treated for 3 to 6 months. They got spinal care every day for 3 to 6 months, every day for 3 to 6 months. And so their results were phenomenal. Look at that, 88% improvement, 72%, 70% improvement. And they actually put in the paper exactly what areas they kept finding the same places where the subluxations were. And I'm going to show you that on the spine where these were. So for the bronchial asthma, it clearly was these, they had the same subluxation patterns, and the atopic dermatitis, they had the same patterns in a different area. So we're going to look at that right now. So when we think of allergies, again, this dysfunction from the nervous system, irritation from the subluxation can manifest in many ways. The allergies, and that can be seasonal allergies, food allergies, pet allergies, but the research says what we can see clinically. And so with allergies that are including sinus type of problems, it's going to be this upper cervical part of the spine right here, because that is where the nerve comes out that goes up into the mucous membranes of the sinuses and goes into the throat area as well. So where we can create that mucus condition with the sinus problems. So that's where that C2 area is here. And then C6 and 7 can also affect that area, again, because it's affecting the immune system in the throat. We also find with allergies that T8 to T10 can be affected. And the reason is because from that study that I just mentioned, what they figured out was T8 to T10, like why would that specifically affect so many atopic illnesses? This is the nerve supply to the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are our stress glands. So when we are stressed, the adrenal glands go into hyper drive, right? Hyper function. And so if we have a subluxation in this area, then it never gets toned down. And when it doesn't get toned down, it just keeps driving the cortisol levels. And that's why it was interfering with the immune system function. And so correcting that area helped allergies and even sinus problems as well. When we look at asthma, what areas were involved with the asthma? Again, it was C2. And again, remember, brainstem level is here as well. So the brainstem is where all the control centers are for all the organ systems. I'll never forget when I was early on in my career as a chiropractor, I was visiting a colleague to watch how he ran his practice. And he came into the room and he said, Dr. Heather, he said, I'm putting something on this table and it's this girl, she gets exercise-induced asthma and she's having an asthma attack right now. Here, she's gonna lay on the table here. Just hold this contact right here at C1 and C2. And so I just stood there like the little boy with his finger in the dike there. I just stood there holding the contact on there and her asthma attack just quieted right down. It quieted right down. And it was the first time that I had understood how directly related that upper cervical area was influencing asthma, things like asthma. The T2 and the T4 right here, this is another common area. Now, why would this be important? Look what it's involved with, nerve supply to the lungs. So that makes complete sense. If there was subluxation in this area, that the brain wouldn't have good control over the lungs, and we could start to see how asthma could play out. Now, the bottom of the spine is also an important area here, this S2, S3, and that is an area that oftentimes I find can affect asthma as well. And the reason for that is that, again, this is one of the areas that can turn down a stress response in the body globally. And so that's why that can help there. When we think of eczema or atopic dermatitis, that kind of thing, it's so itchy and red. And again, there are oftentimes triggers for this. Oftentimes people think of dietary triggers for this. Here's what we find. It is, again, it's going to be that T2 to T4 area. So something about the air, how we're breathing air in and whether we're getting toxins out through the lungs. But then again, that T8 to T10 area, that's the adrenals, but that's also the digestive system. So that's also the small intestines. And then S1 to S3 is the large intestines. So that's how we get rid of toxins. And if that's not working well, then again, there's going to be a backup of toxins in the area. So the adrenals, the liver, the intestines, all that, the ways that we can detoxify our body. So what is it that causes subluxations? It's, jarring of the spine. Traumas can do that, but also it's the bad habits and poor posture, the lifestyle choices that we're making that can actually drive these subluxation patterns. So the overuse of devices can be one of those things where, look at this guy's posture here, right? It's going to put stress on the cervical spine. It's going to put stress right in this upper part of the back. And remember, I told you that with C-sections, how there was an increased incidence of asthma and lung conditions. So I want to just share with you that other reason why C-sections contribute to that. When a baby is born through the birth canal, it comes through and hopefully there's no kind of pulling on their head as they come through, and they come out of the birth canal in a certain, almost like a spiral as they come out. And so that's the design, how we were meant to. But with a C-section, right, you can imagine that baby's head, oftentimes it's engaged in the birth canal. They cut the stomach open. They grab whatever body part they can get a hold of. If it's a leg or an arm or a butt, they grab it and they pull it out. And in pulling it out, oftentimes there's a inflection that happens right in the upper part of the back as they're pulling the baby out. And that could be creating subluxations right in this area that is the nerve supply to the lungs. And so oftentimes when we check the spines of newborns that had C-section, we will not only find upper cervical subluxation, but oftentimes this upper thoracic subluxation as well. Right. So when we look at how do we determine if there is a subluxation, we use instrumentation. I pointed out a graph on the earlier slide there that can measure nerve supply to the organs, nerve supply to the muscles. We use motion. Is there a loss of motion in the spine? Again, remember, when there's a subluxation, you'll get a joint fixation where it straps down that joint and you lose the motion. So we can feel, is there motion or not in the spine? Static palpation. Is there actually literally a misalignment of that joint? So the position is out of alignment. Visualization is looking at the posture, just like I looked at that picture of the guy on his cell phone. That postural analysis is going to tell me where the stress is in the nervous system. And x-rays can also give us a lot of information as well. And so we put all of this objective criteria together in our assessments to determine whether or not there are subluxations and do they seem to relate to the things that people are noticing. So if somebody comes in and they're struggling with allergies or asthma or eczema, you already know now clinically, what am I thinking? Where am I going to find these subluxations for these people? And I'm looking for these classic examples of them to know whether or not I'm going to get some good results. So what are the things that we need to stop doing, slow down doing, and start doing if we want to get our best practices? So get ready. We're looking at the action steps now. It's the action steps that we want to be looking at here now. I'm just going to look at the chat here. So, okay. Yeah, I understand you have to go. So I'm glad that you could join us for this, and we are recording it so you can jump in and watch the rest of it when you come back or when you look at it again. All right. And so here we go. Stop doing, slow down, start doing lists. So we're going to, whoops, let me come right back over here. There it is, and go. So drinking water is key. Drinking hydration is key. And here's why. We need water in our bodies in order to do any functions at all. Water is essential. If we're dehydrated, our body has to come up with some other way of moving things around. It has to create some other fluid. And so that fluid is mucus. So you literally will increase your histamine levels in order to produce more mucus if you're dehydrated. So remember I told you about Elaine early on, and that was one of the things that we really discovered with her, is that she would come in and she'd be like, oh, I've had a flare up of my allergies. And the first question I'd ask her was, are you hydrated? And she's like, oh yeah. And then after a while, she was so excited. She would come in, she goes, yeah, I had a flare up. And then I realized, oh, I wasn't hydrated, and I drank water and it got better right away. So hydration is really important, because it's going to lower the degree of mucus that you're expressing. And that, again, makes everything more comfortable and makes it easier. And then there are different types of mucus producing foods that we might be exposed to. So recognizing the white foods, milk, sugar, flour, those white foods will tend to increase the mucus in our body. So staying away from those is going to make it easier. Replenishing your normal bacterial flora with a good quality full spectrum probiotic, also very important, because again, 80% of your immune system is in your gut. And if the gut flora are not working well, we can start to get leaky gut. When we get leaky gut, it means big proteins that are not well digested are getting into the body. And if that's a food protein, your body's going to say, what's that big protein doing there? I just want amino acids. And that's a foreigner, and it'll start to attack it. And the next thing, the next time that you eat that food, your body's saying, wait, that was the thing we attacked. And all of a sudden you're seeing these food allergies develop. So leaky gut is one of the things that's related to that. And improper gut flora is one of the things that can drive leaky gut. Also restoring your essential fatty acid balance with omega-3s, and that reduces that low-grade kind of chronic inflammation. I'm sorry, I just have to plug in my computer here. There we go. We were about to lose juice. Okay, so making sure you have that healthy gut flora. And I will tell you that eating a diverse diet of probiotic foods like kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, miso, yogurt, those are the kinds of things that will build that diversity in your gut flora. And then, so restoring the fatty acid balance with the omega-3 supplementation, the fish oils, really goes a long way with helping you to resolve inflammation. And then getting back to a healthier sleep pattern, because that will help you restore your natural hormonal cycles. If you don't have good sleep patterns, you'll tend to have cortisol levels that are too high. And we all know the cortisol is going to drive the inflammation, and it's going to drive the stress, and that's going to downregulate the immune system function. And so remember also that the most important healing is going to happen after 5.5 hours of sleep. It's that 5.5 to 7.5 hours is where healing, the most healing happens. So if you're not feeling well and you want your body to heal, you need to get that good sleep. And then most importantly, of course, actually, I want to just mention this thing also. So oftentimes when we have, when we're not allowing our body to have a rest with its digestion, if we're eating many times throughout the day from early in the morning till late at night, then our digestive system is continuously working. And one of the things that our body actually can do is it can eat up the bad cells in our body that are the debris. But if it doesn't get a chance to eat up that debris, then it kind of accumulates. So there has been some research that shows that fasting actually increases what's called autophagy. Autophagy is when we are eating up the bad cells. And one of the research studies that I read about, it showed that if you have your body set up to respond to an allergen, so you're going to have an allergic response when you're exposed to that. If you do fasting, the body actually will eat up those old white blood cells that are ready to go to work because of that trigger. And when it destroys those, it doesn't necessarily replace the new ones unless there's another new reason to have that over response. So oftentimes people will find that their allergies will tone down when they do some fasting. And so if you're curious about that, I can give you more information about that. But especially, essentially, autophagy, even from intermittent fasting, which means, excuse me, just compressing your hours of in the day that you're eating from 6 to 8 hours, so that your first meal and your last meal are within 6 to 8 hours. Then the rest of the 24 hours is when you're doing what's called an intermittent fast. And that actually can be beneficial. So it's not even like a 7-day water fast or a 3-day water fast. Even just intermittent fasting can destroy the immune system cells that are tagged to the allergens. And when they get eaten up, the new stem cells that are stimulated from the fasting, we will stimulate new stem cells. And those new stem cells are virgin. They don't have that trigger associated with them. So they'll replace the old ones, but the new ones are no longer tagged to the same old allergens. So that's how that works. And then of course, the holistic methylation testing that we do, where we look at the genetic variants, that's another thing that can actually be very useful. And then finally, most importantly, getting your spine and nervous system checked for subluxations as well. So those are the key things there. Now, sometimes in the interim, before somebody has really cleared their system of allergies and asthma, there are some tissue-specific nutrients that we can use that can also boost those organ systems and give them what they need to perform better. And so these are some of the supplements that I find oftentimes are useful for folks that struggle with allergies or asthma. Black cumin seed is actually known as, for 5,000 years, they've been using it to help everything except for death. It helps everything except for death is the way, that's its nickname. And so we do find that black cumin seed is wonderful for helping people with allergies. We also find that there are 3 products I often find: Albizia, Allerplex, and Sinus Forte. And they, again, are the building blocks for all the tissues that are involved with allergies. Another one that I don't have here is Antranex. That also is very good with, again, dealing with if you have a lot of that histamine and mucus. It's almost like a natural antihistamine. Now with asthma, I'm going to be very specific with folks that struggle with asthma. There's 7 different products that I might use, and it depends on that person and what's going on with them. Sometimes they need more adrenal support, for example. Other times they need to just have better building blocks for a better blueprint for the lung cells to build new lung cells that are in a healthier version than the old ones that keep getting repeatedly created with that are dysfunctional. But again, I'm just going to do very specific testing to see what's going to be the right fit for that person. But just to know that there are actually tissue-specific things that are out there. Now, I also wanted to introduce you to this book. I'm actually in the middle of this book, and it was referred, a friend of mine told me about it. They said, this is my new favorite book of the entire year. And it's called Breathe, and it's by this fellow, James Nestor, who he basically did an experiment with himself. Like, he had struggled with problems with allergies and I think asthma as well for so many years. And so he just dove into it, and he's an investigative journalist. And so he put himself through some experiments, and it was phenomenal what he learned from it. And then he just brought in what all the other research shows. And so one of the things that he talked about was that the original Homo sapiens that were evolving at the same time as the Neanderthal and I can't remember the names of the other ones, but there were kind of a number of different potential directions that humans could go in. And the Homo sapiens, they actually learned how to cook their food. And so they got to eat food that they didn't have to chew on as much. And so they didn't need as strong of a jawbone and as strong muscles. And because they got more nutrients from their food because they had cooked it, their brains grew faster. And the brains got bigger, and they had to have a place to go. And so what they did is they poked the nose out in front of the face, whereas the Neanderthals and the evolutionary species before Homo sapiens, they had much more of a flatter face and a flatter nose. But with that flatter nose, they had this huge nasal cavity and huge sinuses, and the air, their nostrils were the size of gumdrops. So when air would come in and out, it would just function in a completely different way. And Homo sapiens, we pushed the nose out in front, and our brain had to fill up some of the sinus cavities. So we actually, our our trade-off for that bigger brain and that smarter ability to survive, we were the ones that survived, but the trade-off was we actually lost the capacity to actually breathe in a healthy way. And so as we looked at that whole like convenience lifestyle, we saw that hockey stick escalation. So what we also see is that we're eating like more and more softer foods. We're not chewing as much, and so we don't have strong muscles. And also mouth breathing was one of the things that he found was very troublesome and would affect your health in many ways. And there were some stories, some studies showing how even people that have this totally stuffed nose, if they put tape over their mouth, even just for a few moments, and then they can't stand and they take it off, and then they put it on a little bit longer, and after a while, they actually start to exercise breathing through their nose. And that when people struggle with chronic sinus issues and chronic allergies and chronic asthma, they're not exercising those tissues as much, and they're just going downhill. And so he found that there are things that you can literally do that can change the shape of the sinuses and change the shape of the nose and change the shape of the mouth and the tongue. And so he recommends stop mouth breathing, like shut your mouth. Those are the things that he says, just shut your mouth, stop breathing through your mouth, start breathing through your nose. And also doing stretch exercises and yoga that can actually increase lung capacity. And so when I was reading that, I was remembering that I've seen studies where they literally used spirometers of measuring what the lung capacity is for an individual before they get adjusted and after they get adjusted. And that increases their lung capacity because it's freeing up the nervous system. And so over time with adjustments, we've also seen studies showing chiropractic can actually increase lung capacity, but you can also do stretching and exercises to do that as well. And then, even just things like chewing more. So it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. And I will tell you that his website also has some videos on different breathing exercises. And so you just go check it out. It's free. And so it's another way that you can go. So I want to make sure I'm giving you lots of resources here. All right. So again, how would you know if you had a subluxation? You wouldn't unless you got checked. So if you are wondering about whether you have subluxations right now, some of you are under care, you're getting your results, keep doing what you're doing. But now think about what you can add in that we've also covered here. So you're getting your subluxations corrected, and we're working with nutrition. But look at some of these other things that you can also improve on. But some of you may be also wondering, gee, I wonder if my kids have any subluxations, or what about my partner, or what about my parents, or what about my friends? Like I know some people that are struggling with allergies and asthma. So please share this information with them. We will have a recording of this so they can watch this, but I'm happy to just get on a 10-minute phone call with them as well and just see if I can help. And so I'm remembering that there was this one other guy that was in the practice, and he was somebody that traveled quite a bit, and he didn't have a lot of health concerns. He just wanted to optimize function. So he got regular wellness chiropractic care. He had a good diet. He practiced Tai Chi. And he also traveled a lot internationally. And he always remarked that every time he traveled, he would pick up something and get some kind of cold or something, oftentimes when he would travel. And he would also get jet lag from traveling. And he also happened to have these allergies in the background that he just managed. And so when he was getting regular chiropractic care, of course, that helped. But when we got him on the genetic nutrition protocol, he realized that when he traveled, he now no longer had jet lag. He no longer was picking up any kinds of colds or anything when he traveled. But what he was really blown away with was he no longer had the allergies that he had before. And he's like, I don't know how this works, but it's awesome. And so he's very happy with it as well. And how did it work? He simply started care. We did our analysis. We gave him a plan. He followed the plan. So if you know anybody that I can help, please send them over to us to see if we can help. And if you're not under care right now and you're curious about getting back into care, just send us a text and let us know. We can have a consultation. And we are doing these specials for people that have breathing issues. Our usual cost of our new patient exam is usually $210. But if people are referred in because you're sending them to us, or they watch the workshop, then we're going to cap it at $47. And so they just need to reach out to us and let us know that they're coming to us through this program. And then we'll cap that first visit at 47 for them. All right, so you've got all the information you need. You get that big idea of the nervous system is controlling everything. Remember, the number one most important reason why we have chronic illness and people are continue to suffer is procrastination. Procrastination is the thief of health. So it's time to jump, right? It's time to jump, not just deciding to, but actually doing it. So think of what your action steps are. If you have something that was really valuable to you, go ahead and put it in the chat here and let me know what the thing was that seems to be most useful for you that you're going to take an action step on. And that way you can create accountability by putting it down. What is my action step? What was the piece here that you got today that was going to be most useful for you? Your action step might also include, I'm going to talk to my friend who struggles with allergies and let them know that there's something that can be done, and we can check in with them too. All right, so thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to watch for your chats here of what you came up with. I'm going to stop my recording here, and then I'm going to see if there's any other questions that people have. So let me bring this up now. All right, where is it?